easy for people to get in and edit, because that's the biggest obstacle to start doing this stuff.
Maybe it needs to be made obvious about developing the culture online, so being purposeful. So if you look at people's individual psychological contract with anything, it's about trust and safety and sharing and purpose and opportunity and those things. And so maybe it's about actually thinking, okay, we want to develop this sort of culture and perhaps changing the way it works. But of course, the bigger an organisation gets, no matter what it is, it'll get more structure.
The thing with Wikipedia is you get two different types of people. You get the culture people and you get the content people. And the content people, in my experience, have been like, I don't give a crap about the community. For all I care, you can never add it again, you can never add it again, you can never add it again. So long as this article is right and it is the best article ever on Winston Churchill, everything is fine. And then there's other people like, well, we should encourage you to edit Winston Churchill and you to edit Winston Churchill, and how can we do that? And that's one of the problems when you're developing a
culture of saying this is what we want it to be.
But I mean, is that the goal? It's the question of what's the goal of the project? To develop the content, to share that knowledge, or is the goal to develop the community? And sometimes you get people who think they're in conflict.
But is that the issue about the scope? What's the scope? Is it about quality of articles and being an encyclopedia where everything is right, or is it about building knowledge? That's what you're going to face until it's too vague. Maybe it's not vague. It's too open for interpretation.
But it's got far-ranging topics. I mean,
That has
documenting
developed over time,
George.
though. Like, for example, Shakespeare, this is a classic case at the moment, which is actually in front of ArtCon, which is the committee which looks after arbitration. If you go back to 2001, the topic about Shakespeare was easy for anyone to add. There was always room to add more, because the page was always wrong. If you look at it from a holistic point of view, what should be provided to someone who's unaware.
Yeah.
But now it's at the point that there's topic pages about every little obscure little bit, and that means the finer points are now what are being disputed, and that starts to get very difficult for most people to actually contribute to authoritatively. So, should they be allowed to? If they're just constantly asking silly questions about things that are really quite a matter of scholarship only, and you really can't know these things, unless you actually do study it. Are they asking, or should they be allowed to ask these questions consistently over a 3-year period, which just annoys people who know the answers and know the reason why they are the answers, and that's because it's getting into very minute detail now. Whereas that was never really the intent. There's a lot of discussion over that 10-year period of, where do we draw the line of what is encyclopedic and what should be the scope of our project. And for example, schools is a classic one that a lot of people will know about. High schools have been a topic of dispute as to whether or not they should be included in Wikipedia. And it's, I think, now quite accepted that high schools are, primary schools aren't, sort of depends on the age. But there's a lot of people who say no schools. They're not something that should be encyclopedic. So that's a case of.
But you need the hierarchy, don't you? You want them to enter. Isn't it, the point is the entry point, is it? I guess to get
so
what
I think
page
that's
you're talking about.
The entry point, I think, is the key point. I hear all the talk about Wikipedia, but there was a wiki culture before Wikipedia, and then there's wiki spaces, and there's like a lot of different wikis out there. And I'm interested: is there an umbrella wiki culture that includes Wikipedia? Is obviously the biggest one and the most well-known one. But is there room to talk about wiki culture across wikis?
I would say, in my experience, being across a few of them, is the unique one is Wikipedia, or more. The unique one in this culture is the Wikimedia Foundation wikis, because the other ones I've found have a lot more goodwill, a lot more generosity, maybe because they're smaller, but a lot of the tension that I've observed in the Wikimedia Foundation wikis is because there is the Wikimedia Foundation, and there's an unelected hierarchy, and there's all this sort of stuff that quite often impose themselves into projects and disrupt the whole community and all this sort of stuff. And that's one of some of the most significant problems in those wikis.
But that goes on other wikis.
Well, I haven't found it in mine to that degree, especially in my experience. You go into wiki spaces, It's clear, they have a commercial objective, and that's it.
But what about the individual wikis inside of wiki spaces?
Yeah,
Because that's really what you're comparing. When you look at, say, the foundation-based wikis, you've got massive sites that, Wikipedia covers everything. If you go to an individual site within Wikispaces, the community group set up, they're there for a purpose. They've already done some of that group forming, or they'll go through that group forming thing. What I'm thinking about with, say, Wikipedia or any of the other massive wikis is you've got little pockets who want to influence their little pockets in general. So they'll be interested in updating their topic, in influencing that topic and getting to the nitty-gritty of this aspect of Shakespeare's life. That's what they're interested in. They don't give a rat's about 99% of the other content. And I wonder if that's where some of the tension comes from, is people burrowing into their sections, and they have their goals for those sections, and that may bring them into conflict with other scholars. It may not necessarily be hugely connected to the overarching.
The borough